materials that you'll need for this course. There's quite a few, but you can add more or take some away. The main one you really need is this brush with long, wide bristles, a wide bristle section, 5 centimetres, 2 inches. These brushes are quite cheap. You can quite often find them in those dollar shops. And with all the brushes, here's another series of brushes that you can get. This is my favourite. It's a size 4 Art Basics, and it's a great drafting brush. Other brushes are round like that one. Yeah, these are just examples. The main one that's critical is that big one. So I always soak my brushes before I start, and just in container roughly this sort of shape's great for that. Don't leave your brushes in water because the paint will all come off their handles and the ferrules will rust, so just leave them in water for about 5 minutes till the water goes right up into the hilt. This prevents the, see that's still dry there, it prevents the paint going into the hilt. It's very critical if you use acrylic as well. So just leave those there, and also once they're damp, they're ready to start. With watercolour painting, it's very important to have all your preparation done in advance, because once you start on your paper, it's a very fast process, and you don't want to be messing around looking for things while your paint's drying. Now, speaking of paint, I'll go through these. The titanium white is quite an opaque white, and but all watercolours translucent. This won't cover anything, and in watercolour you don't use white for light, you use a dry paper. I use titanium rather than Chinese white because it's more opaque. Naples yellow is a colour that I use to make flesh. It's got white in it, and it's about the only, in fact it is the only colour that I buy that has white added to it. Naples yellow. And then Van Dyke brown. It's a really lovely brown. It's medium. It's not reddish and not yellowish. It's just an ideal medium brown for mixing colours. It also goes in your flesh colour. Great for hair colour. There's a nice new tube. I use Winsor & Newton paints, my favourite. These are both the same brand, but different labels. French ultramarine blue. It's got quite expensive lately. It's a blue that verges towards the purple. Sort of quite an ideal colour for mixing greys and purples. It's not a great colour for green. And permanent alizarin crimson. Although these days I don't splash out on the permanent anymore because it's outrageously expensive. I've got a few tubes left, but I think I'll just be buying non-permanent from now on because it's a reasonable price and it's still going to last about 50 years. I don't hang my paintings in the sun or direct light, and I don't hang oil paintings in that kind of light, so they should last well. Alizarin crimson is a red that can make a range of purples, but it also makes a range of reds from orange through to vermilion red, depending on the yellows that you add. Then we've got a few optional colours as well. They're the basics that are essential for this workshop. But if you are painting somebody with red hair, you'll need some burnt sienna. It's a lovely, rich, reddish brown. And the other colour that's an optional colour is the Prussian blue, which is more of the turquoise end of the colour spectrum, and absolutely great for hazel eyes, turquoise sort of greeny colours, and mixed with brown it makes beautiful greens. Mixed with burnt sienna, it's a lovely green, and mixed with Van Dyke brown it makes a dirty nice green. So that's a optional colour, you don't have to have it. And then lately I've been using this May Mary Blue brand. It's yellow, Naples yellow reddish. It's in Italian. It's an Italian brand of paint. It's really handy to have a little bit of flesh paint that's not too watery on your palette. I just have a little bit here on my palette just for emergencies. I don't use this for my main flesh mixture. I'll show you the mixture soon. I use this just for emergencies and just touching up areas rather than remaking a wash. So, the other colour is black. It's not a colour, is it? I use black very often. I always use it for the iris in the eyes, for the pupil of the eyes. I always use black for the pupil of the eyes because the pupil is a hole and it just needs to be very, very dark. In watercolour, it's still a translucent paint. I very often have to use it, put several layers on. Very often need a few layers of that. So I can mix it with other colours in an emergency. If I want to quickly put in a little dark shadow, I'll mix it with some red instead of making the dark shadow mixture of the colours. So all those colours, there's not very many. Once you have this nice basic colours on your palette, these basic colours, you learn what they're going to do with each other. You learn the mixtures. You know off by heart what colour they'll turn out on your palette. It's good to just use a limited palette, even if you eventually use completely different colours to me, but I find that I can understand what they'll do for me. There's a lot of variations here as it is without learning, 16 different colours and what they're going to do when they're mixed with each other. You can see here I've got a little bit of a greenish colour that was mixed with the Prussian blue. I always leave these colours on the palette. I never wash this palette. I might wash individual sections. I don't want to waste any of this expensive paint. I have black in a corner. I've got white paint here. I've got the brown, Van Dyke brown on one side and the red over here and its mixtures. Sometimes I do have a bit of Naples yellow on the palette, but it's really not essential. It might be used in the hair. It's not used for anything else. I don't mix it with any of the pure colours once I've made the flesh. The ultramarine here and the Prussian far away from it so that I don't get them mixed up. And that's about it. And I already pointed out the flesh. There's a little touch of burnt sienna there.